No, I thought I would try something new and make like a sort of report on how the development of the this cool game Toon Defense is going. Talk about some of like the like behind the scenes of how it works and what's going to be added in the future and things that were added recently. So here we've got Toon Defense, currently making 0.2.3. So we've got some goals here that I've made in the changelog for the last update. So in 0.2.2 we added new archer enemy, added gun weight and offset options for VR, so the gun doesn't actually match the position of where your controller is but has a bit of delay, adds a bit of weight to the gun, makes it feel a bit more satisfying and a little bit more stable. And a gun offset, so you can change the angle the gun points to whatever's more comfortable with how you hold the controller. Along with that, I made some UI updates, did some balancing on the power-ups. The ragdolls now collide with other enemies, along with some just like bug fixes. The texture filtering was finally fixed because it's supposed to have this like really pixely look, but when it was being built it was blurred. It was using regular linear filtering, so it didn't have that nice pixely look that I wanted. And along that, what's not listed in changelog as well is there's an update to how waves works. Now at the end of the wave there is a bit of time before the next one starts. It waits for you to kill all the current enemies spawned in, and then gives you a little bit of time to have a breather. So that makes the difficulty ramp up a little slower, but also makes waves a bit more distinct, so you know when a wave's end, it doesn't just happen. So now onto this update which is being developed right now. Current goals are a gun overhaul and an animation overhaul. So for the gun overhaul, this is what I've been working on since starting this update. So clean up the pistol code, better links between screen and VR. Honestly, wrote this months ago, no idea what I meant by that. Use actors for gun logic. This is going to be quite interesting, I'll show you this. And a recoil system for juice. So the way that the guns worked before is it was entirely in this messy player blueprint. Here's the gun logic now, but it used to be that all the line traces and damaging and stuff was done within this blueprint, which worked. It looked messy, it was really messy, it was awful to work with, and is not very expandable. Like, the burst fire was a bit of a hack-in, so there's like a specific exception in the shooting code, so when burst fire is active you'll loop the code 3 times. So we've changed it now to be a bit more, what's the word, expandable. So this is the shoot logic, and it doesn't actually do any of the raycasting or anything that's needed for making the guns work. It just asks for data and then uses the data. So specifically we ask for hit bones and the gun hit location. The regular hit bone, this is what's used for the ragdolls, so when you shoot and kill an enemy, if you hit it in the arm, then the ragdoll will push its arm, so it like flings by its arm. You can show. So regular hit bone will detect what's bone's hit and push the bone away, so it looks like there's like actual impact based on where you hit. And then the precise hit bone is used for the bonus shot, so if you hit it in the foot, it'll say like foot in the grave, but if you hit it not quite on the foot, it still affects the foot but it won't give you the points. So that's just to make it feel a bit nicer, but also still keeping the precision needed for like the fancy moves. So now, since that's all still handled in the player, the way that the actual gun's handled is in these separate blueprints. We've got a base gun, so it's just a gun. It has the barrel point where the hit location starts from, and the gun model. And in here we've got like the base events. These are stuff that happens all the time. So at begin play we attach the actor to a component. So for example on the screen version we'll attach the guns to the side of the screen, and in VR we'll attach it to the VR controllers. Child events shoot logic, this is where the actual shooting happens. This is left blank so it can be changed in the children pistol. On tick the recoil tick logic, so on the recoil system this is done within the base gun and it happens on tick since that's the only really good way to do it. Cooldown is just so you don't have to just set this, it looks a bit nicer, that's all. And then here's the add recoil, so on here, yeah, you got a recoil strength variable so you can have it kick back like to the side if you wanted. So it like kicks back, and then a recoil rotate so it leans back. Which you can see here, it moves back a little bit and rotates. And that adds the recoil, which then is handled by recoil tick logic, which is here, where it basically pulls it back to its default position. But it only does that while recoil is active, so the recoil is set to active when recoil is added, and then once it's back to its position the recoil turns off. So this only happens while the gun's not in the default position. And then with this base gun you can go and make more guns. So this is the default pistol, and this is where all the line trace code is done. So you see even here there's no damage, and that's because it's in the base gun actually. So in the player, when you hit the shoot button, there's the shoot logic here, you see it tells the base gun to fire, and in this it checks that cooldown's there, does vibration for VR controllers, and then it tells the gun that you shot to do the shoot logic that does all the line traces, and then it uses the data from that to apply the damage. So in the pistol it does 2 line traces, one for the rough shot, one for the precise shot. Here's where we find what bone you hit closest to, because if you do a line trace and hit the capsule without hitting a bone, it'll report no bone. But on here we find the closest bone to where we hit to find it. And we've got checks and whatnot to make sure that it doesn't come up completely false. And it's in here, yeah. So it just gets that data and saves it for it to be used elsewhere, along with having recoil added. Cooldown started, which can be set in the gun data. The cooldown length 0.2 seconds and the damage 1, as well as recoil, return speed, recoil strength, and the rotate. So yeah, that's the new gun system. This isn't really going to be super visible in the game apart from the recoil. It's just there so in the future adding guns will be a lot easier. Although right now it's not super good. Right now even it pretty much only works for single shot guns like the pistol, because right now we've got the burst fire pistol here, which is going to replace the power up. The power up we just used to set a bool, and now it's going to just replace the guns, which is a bit more complicated but more flexible. So here we have the shoot logic, which is here, and then it actually does the code here, so we can repeat it 3 times like this, and the check that is 3 times is done at the end here. Shots fired and check that is, and then invalidate time reset. But right now the problem is it doesn't apply the damage and properly use that data. So right now when you shoot, it just acts like only one's been shot. So the way we're gonna fix that is by adding a loop function into the base gunfire. So we can pretty much take the loop function from burst fire into base gun here, and then add that onto the gun data for like shots fired. So with that, we'd be able to make multi-shot weapons like burst fire, shotgun, stuff like that, and then that should be finished. With this new update, I'll try to add a new gun power-up. I'm not going to promise on this because the next bit is going to be a little bit complicated as well. So we've also got the animation overhaul. So right now, the animations for the enemies is really basic. If we go into the game right now, one thing you're going to notice is that the animations of the enemies actually just snap. So an enemy will be walking, and as soon as it reaches the player, there's like no smooth transition or anything, it just snaps to the idle animation. It looks quite jarring, it's not very good. So once it reaches, just pop. So it's not very good, and could do with changing. So for that, right now the enemies' animations are handled purely by the blueprint. If we get an enemy up here, we are. You can see, where would it be? Yeah. On player reach, so this is once the skeleton has reached the player, it'll set an event for attacking, and then just play animation, and that removes the normal animation that'll play of running. So what we want to do is make a specific animation blueprint, which is a new system, which is a completely different system built for animation with state machines and such. Which with that we can blend animations, so the skeleton, well, the enemies will not just suddenly stop. There'll be a bit of a blend between. So with that, animations will look a lot better, and along with that, a procedural hit animation system. This is the main thing that's going to make this update a bit more complicated, since I don't actually have an idea of how to do this. So the idea is, when, like, for enemies that have more than 1 health, it takes more shots to hit, and right now you can't really tell if a shot hit or not. So if we grab a zombie, just drag it over here and head into the game, don't worry about that. You see, when you hit it, there's no feedback. So the idea there is to make a procedural system. So using whatever bone gets hit, we push it back a little so it looks like it's just received like an impact force. I'm not sure how to demonstrate. I know a few other games do it to make impact look good. The other solution would be to use like a animation, but I think that would look a bit too jank. So we're going to go with procedural system, so there's feedback in where you hit as well, and that'll just feel a lot better to play. So yeah, those are the plans for the upcoming update, but we also have plans for like longer development, since I do want to get to a 1.0 stage of this game. I want to like sell it, but to sell it I want it to be at a stage where there's enough to do in the game. So of course with the gun overhauls we're doing now, there's going to be more guns, more power-ups and whatnot, but also with that I want to make a modifier system, so you can have enemies extra fast, more enemies spawning, less enemies spawning, so that way we can make categories, I guess, like game modes, have like a pirate game mode with a leaderboard, and make it a lot more feature complete, because like this sort of arcade shooter, if it's going to be sold, like for example a similar game, Dick Wild, it has a bunch of different enemies, a lot more enemies which behave in different ways, a bunch of weapons that you can select at the start, and a proper party system so multiple people can play and it's timed, so you're not just stood there for like 20 minutes as you currently are with this game. We can have time limits, so you can make it a bit more of a party game, and just generally add more game modes, more power-ups and more enemy stuff to make the game feel more complete. So yeah, that's the current development plans for this game, and I hope this made sense. Very sorry that I didn't show any VR footage, since honestly it's just too much of a hassle to get set up right now. But yeah, right now it's working in VR. It took a bit of effort, because I've recently upgraded VR headset from Quest 2 to a PSVR 2, so I've had to change OpenXR from Oculus to Steam, and that just had some weird bugs with this game, like it just wouldn't recognise the headset, but that's been fixed now. So that might be a problem with the current update, that Steam VR doesn't work, but it will in the next update, because that's what I'm testing it on. So yeah, I think that's it. And probably end up talking again about this game when I next have stuff to talk about it with. Bye.